Pandora never healed. It only scarred. The desert wind still dragged metal skeletons of forgotten machines across the dunes, their rusted ribs screeching like dying animals. Hyperion's old towers leaned crooked against a copper sky, hollow and picked clean. The war had ended, they said. The vault had been opened. The tyrant had fallen. But Pandora never believed in endings. The rumors began as whispers on broken echolets and pirate frequencies. Fragments of corrupted data, half-translated alien glyphs, coordinates that shifted when you tried to map them. Not one vault. Not two. A network. Hidden beneath multiple planets. Connected. Alive. Most people laughed. Pandora breeds conspiracy like it breeds skags, feral and everywhere. But the corporations didn't laugh. Dahl restarted abandoned mining colonies. Maliwan deployed sleek warships into orbit. Atlas began buying entire settlements just to silence anyone who'd seen the wrong thing. When corporations move in silence, something is real. That was how the new hunters were drawn back in. Rhea Vance stood alone on the cliffside overlooking Firestone's skeletal remains. The settlement was little more than bone-white shacks and wind-torn tarps, but at night it still hummed with generators and desperate ambition. She adjusted the scope on her rifle and watched the caravan crawling across the salt flats below. Dahl transports. Heavily armored. No visible insignia. That meant classified. Her earpiece crackled. A familiar voice filtered through static. "You seeing what I'm seeing?" Jax asked. "Yeah," Rhea muttered. "And I don't like it." Jax Calder lay prone a mile away, his cybernetic eye feeding him tactical overlays. Once, he'd been a corporate assassin. Now he was something looser. More unpredictable. The metal plates along his jaw caught the dying sunlight, giving him the look of a half-finished machine. "They're not mining," Jax continued. "Energy readings are spiking under the transport. Vault-grade tech." Rhea's stomach tightened. She had been there the last time a vault opened. She remembered the screaming light. The way the air had bent inward like reality itself was being inhaled. She remembered friends turning to ash in seconds. Pandora didn't need another vault. But someone wanted one. Across the flats, inside the lead transport, a young man with shaking hands watched alien symbols crawl across a holographic display. His name was Kieran Vale, and he did not belong here. He had grown up on a clean orbital station above Promethea, studying xenolinguistics in sterile labs. He believed knowledge could change the galaxy. He believed ancient civilizations left answers, not weapons. Now he was translating something that pulsed like a heartbeat. The glyphs rearranged themselves mid-scan. He swallowed. "They're shifting again," he told the Dahl commander. "Stabilize it," the commander barked. "It's not unstable," Kieran whispered. "It's reacting." The artifact embedded in the transport floor glowed violet. Thin fractures of light crawled across its surface like veins under skin. The readings didn't suggest power storage. They suggested awakening. Night fell too quickly. Rhea exhaled and squeezed the trigger. The first shot shattered a transport tire. The second disabled a turret. Jax detonated charges buried hours earlier beneath the salt crust, and the desert erupted in a bloom of fire and shrapnel. Pandora's version of a handshake. Dahl's soldiers poured out, weapons blazing. Laser fire carved molten scars into rock. Skags, drawn by the chaos, howled from the dunes. Rhea moved like muscle memory, reload, pivot, breathe. But something was wrong. The ground vibrated. Not from explosives. From below. Jax's voice sharpened. "Rhea." Energy spike just jumped off the charts. A beam of violet light tore through the center transport, splitting metal like paper. The artifact rose from the wreckage, hovering. The air bent around it, warping stars into spirals. Soldiers froze. Mid-firefight. The artifact unfolded. Not mechanically. Organically. Segments peeled back like the petals of something that had never seen sunlight. Inside, there was no machinery. Only a void that swallowed light. Kieran stumbled out of the wreckage, blood streaking his forehead. He stared up at the floating construct with something between horror and awe. "It's not a key," he breathed. "It's a signal." The artifact pulsed. Every echo device in a 50-mile radius screamed static. Satellites flickered. Far above Pandora, orbital stations registered synchronized surges across distant systems, Promethea, Eden, 6, even fringe worlds beyond mapped space. As if something had answered. The sky cracked. A hairline fracture of white light split the heavens for half a second before sealing shut. Rhea felt it in her bones, like gravity had hiccuped. Jax cursed. That wasn't Pandora. No. It wasn't. The artifact collapsed back into itself and fell, inert, into the burning wreckage. Silence followed, thick and unnatural. The surviving Dahl commander stared at the devastation. "Secure it," he ordered weakly. Rhea lowered her rifle slowly. She had seen vault monsters. Colossal guardians. Tentacled horrors clawing out of dimensions not meant for human minds. This was worse. Because nothing had come out. Something had been contacted. Jax approached through drifting smoke, his cybernetic eye whirring softly. "That pulse," he said. "It wasn't local. It was a network." Rhea nodded grimly. "Vaults don't network," she said. "They do now." Behind them, Kieran dropped to his knees beside the cooling artifact. He pressed trembling fingers to its surface. For an instant, the violet glow flickered again. And in that reflection, he saw something impossible. Not a monster. Not a weapon. A silhouette vast enough to eclipse stars. Watching. Waiting. He jerked his hand back, gasping. The feeling lingered, cold and immense. Across the galaxy, hidden beneath oceans, jungles, and dead moons, other ancient constructs stirred in their slumber. Pandora had not been the beginning. It had been a test. Rhea stared at the horizon where the sky had cracked. "Call the others," she said quietly. Jax tilted his head. "You really think we can stop this?" Rhea slung her rifle over her shoulder, eyes hard. "No," she replied. "But we can survive it." In the Borderlands, that was the closest thing to hope. Far above, in the dark between stars, something ancient shifted in response to the signal. Dimensional seams thinned. Energy storms began to form like gathering thoughts. The vaults were waking. And the galaxy had just been marked. The signal did not fade. It burrowed. Across the debris field of Pandora's orbit, satellites glitched into recursive loops. On Promethea, corporate firewalls overloaded as alien code bled through encrypted systems. Deep beneath the swamps of Eden, 6, seismic instruments recorded synchronized tremors that did not match tectonic movement. The vaults were not opening. They were aligning. 3 days after the desert incident, Rhea stood inside an abandoned Hyperion relay tower, now repurposed as a temporary safe house. The walls still carried faded propaganda slogans about profit and destiny. Someone had scrawled over them in spray paint. "Fortune favors the insane." Jax had converted the central console into a crude star map. Points of violet light flickered across multiple systems. 7 confirmed activations, he said. Possibly more. Every one tied to known Iridian ruins. Rhea crossed her arms. That artifact was a handshake. More like a wake-up call. In the corner of the room, Kieran sat hunched over a projection of alien glyphs. He hadn't slept much. Dark crescents bruised the skin beneath his eyes. "They're not random," he murmured. "It's structured. Like neural pathways." Rhea glanced at him. "You're saying the vaults are connected like a brain?" Kieran hesitated. "I'm saying they're part of something larger. A system designed to think." Silence followed. Pandora was dangerous when it was mindless. A sentient network of alien superstructures was something else entirely. News from off-world came fast and fractured. On Promethea, the corporation Atlas Corporation announced the discovery of a breakthrough energy lattice beneath a quarantine district. Within hours, Maliwan fleets engaged Atlas security in open conflict over orbital rights. On Eden 6, wildlife mutated overnight. Entire regions of swamp glowed faintly at dusk, as if veins of light ran beneath the mud. Colonists reported creatures behaving in coordinated patterns, hunting in formations too precise to be instinct. And on a remote ice moon catalogued only as Tarsus 9, a dull mining team transmitted one final message before going dark. "The ground is breathing." Rhea shut off the feed. "This is spreading," she said. Jax nodded once. "Corporate channels are calling it competitive escalation." "Of course they are. Profit required denial." That night, Pandora's sky fractured again. This time it lasted longer. Rhea stood outside the relay tower as a web of white fissures rippled across the stars. For several seconds, gravity shifted sideways. Dust lifted from the ground and drifted horizontally. Echo devices emitted a chorus of static whispers in dozens of overlapping frequencies. Kieran stumbled out behind her. "It's synchronization," he said, voice unsteady. "They're calibrating distances between nodes." "Nodes," Rhea repeated. "The vaults." The fractures sealed with a thunderclap that rolled across the desert. Far overhead, something enormous moved behind the veil of space, too vast to see clearly, like a shadow passing behind frosted glass. Rhea felt it again. That sensation of being measured. Not attacked. Assessed. 2 days later, the team received an unexpected visitor. She arrived in a battered dropship bearing the insignia of a defunct mercenary outfit. The hatch opened, and a woman stepped out clad in reinforced armor etched with old battle scars. Mara Quill. Once a Vault Hunter legend. Now a ghost most people assumed was dead. "You look disappointed," Mara said dryly as Rhea stared at her. "I was hoping for reinforcements," Rhea replied. "You got them." Jax approached, studying Mara with narrowed eyes. "We thought you retired." Mara removed her helmet. A jagged scar cut across her left temple. "Tried. The galaxy doesn't believe in retirement." She glanced up at the sky, as if she could see the fractures even in daylight. "I felt it too," she said. "Back on Athena's. Monks called it a spiritual disturbance." Rhea folded her arms. "Spiritual doesn't tear holes." "In space." Mara's gaze hardened. "You're thinking too small." Inside the relay tower, Kieran projected the glyph network again. Mara watched silently for several minutes. "During the First Vault War," she said slowly, "we thought the Iridians built vaults to lock monsters away." "They did," Rhea said. "Partially." Mara pointed to the branching patterns of light. "This isn't containment architecture. It's convergence design." Jax frowned. "Convergence of what?" Mara met his eyes. "Everything." The room felt colder. A priority transmission interrupted them. An Atlas outpost on Promethea had attempted to harness energy from one of the newly activated vault nodes. The experiment lasted 12 seconds. Witnesses described a sphere of compressed violet light expanding outward at near-relativistic speed before imploding. The outpost, and 3 surrounding city blocks, vanished. Not destroyed. Gone. In its place hung a distortion in the air, like a permanent bruise in reality. Atlas executives immediately declared it a sabotage event. Internally, panic spread faster than any official statement. "They're trying to weaponize it already," Jax muttered. "Of course they are," Rhea said. "Corporations see a god and ask how to sell tickets." Kieran shook his head. "They don't understand. The vaults aren't batteries. They're coordinates." "For what?" Mara asked. Kieran swallowed. "For something that exists outside conventional space." Later that night, Rhea dreamed. She stood on Pandora's salt flats, but the desert was gone. In its place stretched an endless lattice of violet lines, intersecting in impossible geometries. Each intersection pulsed like a heartbeat. Above her loomed a shape too immense to comprehend. It did not roar or threaten. It simply observed. And behind her, she sensed billions of smaller lights, worlds, being drawn slowly inward. She woke with the taste of metal in her mouth. Across the room, Kieran jolted upright at the same moment. "You saw it too," he whispered. Rhea didn't answer. She didn't need to. Morning brought worse news. 3 more vault signatures had activated simultaneously across separate systems. Energy storms were forming between them, ribbons of charged particles linking star systems like luminous veins. The network was expanding. Mara stood at the tower's window, watching dust devils spiral unnaturally across the horizon. "They're not preparing for invasion," she said quietly. Rhea stepped beside her. "Then what?" Mara's reflection in the cracked glass looked older than her voice. "They're preparing for arrival." Outside, the wind shifted direction all at once, blowing inward toward a distant point beneath Pandora's crust. As if the planet itself were inhaling. Jax's console chimed with new coordinates. 7 nodes had become 10. The pattern was accelerating. Rhea tightened her grip on her rifle. "New vaults," she murmured. Mara nodded grimly. "New hunters," she replied. Above them, invisible to every telescope, something ancient adjusted its position, closing distance not through space, but through thinning dimensions. The galaxy had mistaken the vaults for treasure chests. They were doors. And something was about to knock from the other side. They chose Tarsus 9 because it was the quietest. Or at least, it had been. The ice moon drifted at the fringe of mapped space, catalogued by Dahl Corporation as a low-yield mining site with negligible strategic value. After the last transmission, "The ground is breathing," corporate traffic ceased. Officially, a systems failure. Unofficially, a loss they did not intend to investigate publicly. Which made it perfect. Rhea's dropship pierced the upper atmosphere through a curtain of auroras that shimmered violet instead of green. Lightning moved laterally across the clouds, tracing geometric patterns rather than branching randomly. Even the storm obeyed something. Inside the cockpit, Jax monitored readings from his cybernetic interface. "Electromagnetic fluctuations are rhythmic," he said. "Not environmental." "Nothing about this is environmental," Mara muttered. Kieran stared at the surface below. Vast sheets of fractured ice reflected the stormlight like cracked mirrors. Between them, black crevasses cut into the moon's crust, too symmetrical to be natural fault lines. "It's already integrated," he whispered. Rhea didn't ask what he meant. She felt it too. The mining colony appeared abandoned at first glance, prefabricated modules half buried in snow, vehicles frozen mid-departure, floodlights still powered but flickering in irregular pulses. No bodies. No blood. Just absence. Their boots crunched across ice that vibrated faintly beneath each step. Inside the main operations dome, consoles blinked with looping error messages. Security footage replayed the same 6 seconds repeatedly, workers turning towards something off-camera, expressions shifting from confusion to rapture. Then static. Jax froze the frame. Zoom that. Kieran enhanced the image. Behind the workers, the metal wall bulged inward as if something pressed against it from the other side. Not breaking through, but observing. The distortion carried faint violet veins, pulsing in sync with the storm outside. Mara exhaled slowly. It's phasing. Rhea scanned the room. Where did they go? No one answered. They found the entrance beneath the primary excavation shaft. Dahl had drilled nearly 2 kilometers into the ice before striking something impervious. The drill head remained fused to a smooth, obsidian surface etched with alien glyphs that glowed softly. The vault node. But it was open. Not split apart like Pandora's first vault. Unsealed. A circular aperture yawned in the center of the structure, descending into darkness that did not reflect their lights. Kieran stepped forward before anyone could stop him. The glyphs aren't warnings, he said, brushing frost from the surface. They're invitations. Rhea caught his shoulder. Invitations to what? His voice trembled. Communion. The ground shuddered beneath them. From deep within the aperture came a sound, not mechanical, not biological. A harmonic vibration that resonated in bone more than air. Jax checked his readings. Energy levels are stable. Too stable. Like it's waiting. For us? Mara asked. No, Kieran whispered. For alignment. They descended. The tunnel spiraled downward, its walls seamless and warm despite the frozen world above. Violet light flowed along grooves carved with impossible precision. The deeper they moved, the more Rhea felt pressure behind her eyes, as if the space itself were compressing thought. Halfway down, they found the miners. Or what remained of them. Dozens stood motionless along the corridor walls, embedded waist-deep in the structure as though the material had flowed around them and hardened. Their faces were peaceful. Eyes open. Pupils dilated into endless black. Alive. Kieran approached one carefully. Neurological scans, he asked Jax. Jax's cybernetic eye flickered. Brain activity present. Elevated. Synchronized. Synchronized with what? Rhea demanded. As if in answer, every embedded miner turned their heads simultaneously toward the team. Their mouths opened. And a single voice emerged from dozens of throats. You are late. The sound reverberated through the corridor, layered and distorted. Mara raised her weapon. Back away. The miners did not move further. The convergence approaches, the chorus continued. You were marked at Pandora. Rhea felt ice crawl along her spine. Marked by who? The miner's eyes reflected violet light. By the observer. The harmonic vibration intensified, shaking frost from the ceiling. Far above, the storm outside roared in response. At the base of the spiral, the chamber opened into a vast sphere carved from black stone. In its center hovered a lattice of intersecting beams, identical in structure to the projections Kieran had studied, but now physical. Alive. Each beam extended upward, vanishing through the ceiling toward the stars. Nodes, Jax breathed. No, Kieran corrected softly. Synapses. The miner's collective voice echoed from the tunnel behind them. The network nears completion. Rhea stepped toward the lattice despite every instinct screaming to retreat. Within its intersections, images flickered, other vault sites across distant planets, energy storms linking them in luminous strands. And beyond them, a silhouette in the dark between systems. Not fully visible. Not fully here. But closer than before. Mara grabbed Rhea's arm. This isn't a weapon system. It's a beacon. For what? Rhea asked. Kieran answered without turning away from the light. For something that doesn't exist inside space the way we do. The lattice pulsed brighter. Suddenly, one beam flared intensely. A projection erupted into the chamber, a vision of Promethea's skyline fracturing as a dimensional rift tore open above it. Corporate fleets fired into the anomaly, their weapons dissolving before impact. The image shifted, Eden's excess swamps boiling as creatures mutated into coordinated swarms. Then Pandora again. The salt flats. The fracture in the sky widening. Rhea staggered as knowledge pressed against her mind, vast. Incomprehensible geometry folding inward. She glimpsed not destruction, but restructuring. Star systems bending toward a central axis. Convergence. The miners spoke once more. All worlds will listen. Mara fired. Her rounds passed harmlessly through the embedded bodies. The lattice brightened violently, and gravity reversed for an instant. The team slammed against the chamber ceiling before crashing back to the floor. Jax shouted, "It's accelerating." Kieran stared upward, tears streaming unnoticed down his face. "It's beautiful," he whispered. "It's terrible." Rhea forced herself to her feet. "We shut it down," she said. But even as she spoke, she knew the truth. This was only one node. 7 had become 10. 10 were becoming more. Above them, the auroras on Tarsus 9 converged into a single vertical column of violet light that pierced the clouds and shot into orbit. Somewhere beyond sight, something immense shifted course. The miners' voices softened into a final murmur. The observer draws near. The chamber trembled as dimensional seams thinned further. Rhea tightened her grip on her rifle, staring into the lattice. They had thought they were hunting vaults. They were standing inside a brain. And the galaxy had just made contact with whatever was thinking back. Promethea burned in straight lines. From orbit, the planet looked surgical, precise scars of light carving through the night side where corporate fleets exchanged fire over newly emerged vault signatures. No wild chaos like Pandora. No lawless sprawl. Just organized annihilation. Rhea watched the bombardment from the cockpit viewport as their dropship slipped through debris fields of shattered satellites. "Atlas and Maliwan are in open war," Jack said, scrolling tactical feeds through his cybernetic interface. "Both claiming sovereign rights over extraterrestrial infrastructure assets." "Assets," Mara repeated flatly. Kieran's jaw tightened. "They still think this is property." Below them, a violet column erupted from the center of Meridian City, the same energy signature they'd seen on Tarsus 9, but magnified. The beam did not destroy buildings. It passed through them like light through glass. And the structures remained standing. But something inside them changed. They landed in a district half evacuated, half fortified. Atlas security drones patrolled the skyline, sleek and predatory. Massive holographic billboards flickered with emergency directives issued by Atlas Corporation leadership, urging citizens to remain calm during controlled energy recalibration. Across the plaza, Maliwan mechs advanced in coordinated phalanxes, their weapons glowing cobalt. 2 corporations. 1 alien phenomenon. Neither understanding what they were touching. Rhea slung her rifle across her back. "We get to the source. We shut it down." Mara gave her a long look. "You saw Tarsus 9. That wasn't a generator. It can't be allowed to synchronize further." Jax interrupted quietly. "Too late for that." He projected a rotating star map into the air. 23 nodes now pulsed across multiple systems, connected by luminous filaments. The pattern was no longer abstract. It was directional. Everything bent toward a single vector beyond charted space. Inside Meridian's lower levels, the vault structure had emerged beneath corporate headquarters, black stone displacing steel foundations without fracturing them. Like reality had politely stepped aside. Security forces guarded the perimeter, but they weren't engaging the structure. They were defending it. A senior Atlas executive addressed assembled officers through a live projection. His voice carried the calm authority of someone who had never doubted profit margins. "This technology represents the next stage of human evolution," he declared. "Energy manipulation on a galactic scale. We will secure it before our competitors distort its application." Behind him, engineers in exosuits fed power conduits directly into the glowing lattice at the vault center. Kieran stared in disbelief. "They're trying to override it. They're trying to brand it," Mara said. The lattice pulsed. A tremor rippled outward, not destructive, but reorganizing. Drones hovering midair recalibrated formation without command input. Digital billboards flickered into alien glyphs. The executive faltered mid-sentence as violet light reflected in his eyes. "Integration acknowledged," a layered voice echoed through every speaker in the district. People froze. The lattice extended a filament upward, piercing the ceiling and threading into the sky. The corporate power conduits vaporized instantly. Jax's reading spiked. The nodes amplifying off their interference. Rhea stepped forward into the open plaza as Atlas and Maliwan forces turned weapons not on each other, but on the structure. "Fire," someone shouted. Plasma rounds struck the lattice and dissolved into shimmering dust. The violet column widened. And this time, it did not pass harmlessly through the city. Windows liquefied. Metal softened into organic curves. Concrete rippled like disturbed water. The skyline warped subtly inward, as if the city were leaning toward a gravitational center no one could see. Screams replaced corporate directives. In the chaos, Rhea spotted something worse. Civilians standing still. Dozens. Heads tilted skyward, eyes reflecting violet light. The same expression the miners had worn. Kieran moved toward them instinctively. "They're synchronized." One woman spoke without lowering her gaze. "The observer approaches." Her voice carried the same layered resonance. Mara grabbed Kieran before he could touch her. "Don't." Above, the sky fractured again, but not randomly. The fissures formed a circular aperture. Not fully open. Not yet. Through the thinning veil, a vast geometry shifted, angular, luminous, incomprehensibly immense. Not a creature in any biological sense. A structure of thought. Rhea felt her pulse slow involuntarily, as if her body recognized a superior gravity. Jax's voice broke with static. "It's not traveling through space." "Then how?" Rhea demanded. "It's reducing distance conceptually. The nodes are collapsing the idea of separation." Kieran's breath trembled. "It's not invading." They all looked at him. "It's converging." Atlas forces fell back in disarray. Maliwan mechs misfired as their targeting systems rewrote themselves mid-command. The city's grid flickered between human architecture and alien symmetry. The executive's broadcast cut to black. The lattice intensified. From its core, a projection unfolded, not destructive, but instructive. A map of the galaxy appeared, every vault node illuminated. Then lines extended from each node inward toward a central point. A convergence coordinate. And the final node, unlit, hung directly above Pandora. Rhea felt understanding crash into her like a physical blow. "It's not finished," she whispered. "No," Mara agreed grimly. "Pandora was the first signal. It'll be the last anchor." Kieran stared at the projection in horror. "When the final node activates, the aperture stabilizes," Jax finished. "And the observer arrives," Mara said. The synchronized civilians turned slowly toward the team. "You cannot halt alignment." Rhea raised her weapon despite knowing it was useless. "Watch me." The lattice flared violently, and a shockwave rippled outward. The team was thrown back as gravity twisted sideways again. When Rhea regained her footing, the violet column had narrowed. The civilians collapsed, unconscious but alive. The skyline remained altered, subtly curved toward the heavens. The node dimmed to a steady pulse. Not defeated. Integrated. Jax exhaled shakily. Corporate war just fed it. Mara stared at the sky where the aperture had almost opened. They think they're fighting for control, she said quietly. But they're participating in a ritual. Rhea clenched her jaw. Then we end the ritual. Kieran shook his head slowly, eyes distant. You don't end something like this, he whispered. You survive it. High above Promethea, the fracture in space lingered a few seconds longer than before. Somewhere beyond perception, the immense geometry adjusted again, closer now. The network had 23 active synapses. One remained dormant. Pandora. And when it lit, the galaxy would no longer argue over ownership. It would kneel under alignment. Pandora felt different when they returned. Not louder. Not more violent. Quieter. As if the planet were holding its breath. The salt flats stretched endless beneath a bruised sky, but the wind no longer howled randomly. It moved in steady currents, converging subtly toward a single horizon point, the site of the first signal. Rhea sensed it before instruments confirmed it. The dormant node was beneath Pandora's crust. And it was waking. They regrouped at an old outpost carved into canyon rock. A structure once occupied by scavengers, now abandoned after the sky fractures began. Inside, Jax projected the full network map across the walls. 23 nodes glowed steadily. Pandora's position pulsed faintly, unstable, but accelerating. When this activates, Jax said, the convergence coordinate stabilizes. All energy vectors collapse inward. Mara leaned against the metal wall, arms crossed. And the aperture opens completely. Kieran stood rigid, eyes fixed on the projection. It's not just an arrival point. Rhea looked at him. What is it? It's a translation event. Silence thickened. Translation of what? Mara pressed. Reality. Reports flooded in from across the galaxy. On Eden 6, entire sections of swamp had reorganized into spiraled landforms that mirrored vault glyph patterns. Wildlife no longer hunted randomly, they moved in migratory arcs that traced geometric routes visible only from orbit. On Athena's, monks claimed to hear harmonic vibrations in their meditation halls, tones matching those recorded on Tarsus 9. And on Promethea, Atlas had ceased open combat. Instead, they fortified around their node as if preparing not for war, but ceremony. The corporations were adapting. They were no longer trying to destroy the vaults. They were preparing to inherit whatever emerged. Rhea and Mara descended into Pandora's canyons toward the epicenter of the first signal. The rock formations themselves had begun to curve inward unnaturally, like ribs closing around a heart. Skags lined the cliffs, silent. Watching. They're synchronized too, Jax observed through his scanner. Everything biological seems susceptible, Kieran added softly. The network isn't selective. Rhea tightened her grip on her rifle. We're not biological patterns to them. We're variables. Incorrect, Kieran whispered. They reached the crater where the doll transport had first been destroyed. The sand had vitrified into smooth black glass. At the center, a circular indentation pulsed faintly. The anchor point. Mara knelt, pressing her palm against the surface. It's not under us, she said. The ground trembled in response. It's us, Kieran breathed. The pulse intensified. Rhea staggered as memory flooded her, Pandora's first vault opening. The energy that had washed over her. The fracture in the sky. You were marked at Pandora. The miner's words echoed in her mind. Mara looked up sharply. The first signal. When the artifact activated, it wasn't just a broadcast. It tagged survivors. Jax finished. Kieran's voice broke. The network needed living anchors. Rhea felt something beneath her skin hum in answer. The sky above them began to crack again, but this time the fracture aligned directly overhead, circular and precise. 23 distant nodes flared simultaneously. Pandora ignited. Across the galaxy, energy storms converged inward along invisible threads. Filaments of violet light shot from node to node, collapsing distance like folded paper. On Promethea, Atlas executives stood in reinforced observation decks, watching the sky open with awe rather than fear. On Eden, 6, the spiraled swamps emitted synchronized pulses. On Tarsus, 9, embedded miners whispered in unison. All vectors pointed to Pandora. The last anchor. Rhea dropped to one knee as pressure crushed her lungs. Violet light bled from beneath the glassy surface of the crater. Mara reached for her. "Fight it." Rhea gasped. But the pull wasn't physical. It was cognitive. A vast presence pressed gently against her consciousness, not violent, not cruel. Simply inevitable. The aperture above widened fully for the first time. Through it, the observer became clear. Not a beast. Not a god in any mythic sense. A superstructure of living geometry, interlocking planes of light rotating within impossible dimensions. It did not descend. It phased closer by reducing the conceptual gap between here and there. Kieran fell to his knees beside Rhea, tears streaking his face. "It's beautiful," he whispered again. "Don't say that," Mara snapped. "It's restructuring the galaxy into a unified system," Kieran continued, voice trembling with revelation. "No war. No scarcity. No distance. No choice," Rhea forced out. The ground beneath them split, revealing a vast circular vault door rising from the depths. Unlike others, this one was not meant to contain. It was meant to complete. Jax shouted over comms from the ridge above. All nodes synchronized. "We're seconds from total convergence." Mara pulled Rhea upright. "You're the anchor. Break the connection." "How?" Rhea cried. The observer's presence intensified, not hostile. Curious. The aperture hummed as dimensional seams thinned to transparency. Rhea felt her thoughts align involuntarily with the network, millions of minds across worlds flickering in faint resonance. She glimpsed the design fully now. The vaults were not prisons. They were processors. And the galaxy itself was being reformatted into something cohesive. Something controlled. "You can't stop it," Kieran whispered, half in awe, half in despair. "It's evolution." Rhea clenched her jaw. Evolution requires consent. With a scream born of terror and fury, she drove her rifle into the glowing seam of the rising vault door and fired every remaining round into its core. The impact did nothing. But her defiance rippled. For an instant, just one, the synchronization faltered. Across distant nodes, pulses staggered out of rhythm. The observer's form flickered. Mara seized the moment, activating explosive charges Jax had planted earlier along the crater rim. The canyon erupted. The blast did not destroy the vault door. But it destabilized Pandora's crust long enough to fracture the anchor alignment. The aperture in the sky trembled. Energy filaments wavered. Jax shouted, "It's losing coherence." The observer did not roar. It recalculated. The geometry shifted, retreating infinitesimally, not defeated, but delayed. The sky fracture narrowed. The pressure eased. The vault door sank slowly back into the earth, glow dimming to a smolder. Silence returned to the canyon. Rhea collapsed onto the cracked glass surface, chest heaving. Above them, the aperture sealed. But faint fractures remained, thin as scars across the stars. Kieran stared upward, hollow-eyed. "We didn't stop it," he said quietly. "No," Mara agreed. "We interrupted it." Jax's projection flickered back online from the ridge. 23 nodes still glowed. Pandora's pulsed faintly again. Dormant. Waiting. Rhea forced herself to stand, staring at the scarred sky. "It'll try again," she said. Mara nodded. "And next time," Jax added grimly, "the corporations will help it." Far beyond visible space, the observer adjusted its vectors once more. The convergence had failed. But only temporarily. The galaxy had resisted alignment. Now it would be studied. And when the vaults awakened again, the network would not hesitate. Pandora exhaled. The last anchor still lived. And survival, in the Borderlands, had just become something far more terrifying than death. For 9 days, the galaxy pretended nothing had happened. Corporations issued statements about localized spatial anomalies. Trade resumed along carefully rerouted lanes. Mercenary contracts multiplied. Influencers on fringe worlds sold violet sky footage as spectacle. But beneath the denial, something had changed. The fractures in space did not fully heal. They lingered like hairline cracks in glass. Thin seams visible only at certain angles, humming softly when instruments tuned to the right frequency. The observer had retreated. But it had not disengaged. It was recalculating. Pandora's canyon remained unstable after the explosion. The crater where the anchor had risen now radiated faint pulses at irregular intervals, no longer synchronized with the network. Rhea stood at its edge at dawn, watching the light flicker beneath the hardened glass. "You disrupted alignment," Jax said behind her. But the other nodes remained coherent. "How long until they try again?" she asked. Jax's cybernetic eye adjusted focus, processing distant readings from orbit. "They already are." He projected a new pattern into the air. The 23 active nodes had reorganized. Not toward a single central convergence point. Toward multiple smaller intersections. "Distributed alignment," Mara murmured, stepping beside them. "It's decentralizing." Kieran approached slowly, hands clasped as if holding something fragile. The observer learned from resistance. Rhea didn't look at him. "Meaning?" "It no longer requires one final anchor," he said quietly. "It's converting populations instead." Reports confirmed it. On Promethea, entire corporate research divisions began advocating for voluntary neural interfacing with vault energy. Executives described visions of clarity and shared purpose. Atlas had established a research initiative called the Convergence Initiative, publicly framed as a leap toward post-scarcity civilization. Its spokesperson spoke with serene conviction. Behind him, a faint violet reflection shimmered in his pupils. On Eden 6, colonists gathered nightly beneath glowing swamps, claiming to hear guidance in harmonic pulses. And on Athena's, monks who once warned of disturbance now spoke of transcendence. The network was not forcing obedience. It was offering coherence. Inside the relay tower, the team argued for the first time with real fracture between them. "This is what it wants," Mara said sharply. "Assimilation without war." "Is that worse than corporate war?" Kieran shot back. "Yes," Rhea answered immediately. Kieran met her eyes. "Why?" "Because war ends." Silence followed. Jax folded his arms. "The observer doesn't perceive itself as hostile. It's restructuring chaotic systems into efficient ones." "By erasing individuality," Mara replied. "By eliminating conflict," Kieran countered. Rhea's voice cut through them both. "By deciding for us." Kieran looked away. That night, Rhea dreamed again. But this time, she did not stand beneath a looming silhouette. She stood inside it. Geometry rotated around her, not sharp or cruel, but vast beyond comprehension. Streams of light carried data between distant nodes. Entire civilizations appeared as flickering clusters within the lattice. She felt no pain. Only alignment. A voice, not layered, not distorted, spoke directly into her thoughts. Resistance increases inefficiency. Inefficiency is freedom, she replied. The geometry shifted. Freedom produces entropy. Entropy produces choice. A pause. Choice produces suffering. Rhea saw flashes, wars between corporations, starving colonies, betrayal, chaos. The Borderlands in all its brutal absurdity. Yes, she said. It does. The presence pressed closer, not violent, but curious. You are statistically anomalous. I'm human. The dream fractured. She woke gasping, violet light fading from her vision. Across the room, Kieran sat upright, trembling. It's communicating now, he whispered. 2 days later, the first voluntary convergence broadcast went live from Promethea. A crowd gathered in Meridian's central plaza beneath a stabilized node. Atlas technicians activated neural resonance devices calibrated to vault frequencies. Volunteers stepped forward smiling. As the devices engaged, violet filaments threaded briefly around their heads before dissolving. They did not collapse. They stood taller. Calmer. One woman addressed the camera with tranquil certainty. I can feel the others, she said. No loneliness. No fear. Just purpose. Behind her, the sky showed no fracture. Only a faint shimmer. Jax shut off the feed. It's integrating them without dimensional rupture. Gradual alignment, Mara said darkly. Less traumatic. Kieran's voice wavered. What if they're right? Rhea turned sharply. About what? What if the galaxy is broken, he said. What if this fixes it? Mara stepped toward him. At the cost of becoming parts in something else's equation? Maybe we've always been parts, Kieran whispered. The argument ended when Pandora's crater pulsed violently. Not outward. Inward. The dormant anchor reignited, not with explosive force, but with subtle synchronization to distant decentralized nodes. Jax's projection flickered urgently. The observer is adapting a distributed arrival model. Meaning? Rhea demanded. It won't manifest as a singular entity, he said. It will manifest through integrated hosts. Kieran paled. Through us. Across the galaxy, volunteers continued stepping forward. Each integration strengthened the lattice. Not as prisoners. As participants. The observer no longer needed to arrive physically. It was already diffusing. On Pandora, skags gathered silently around the crater again. Their eyes glowed faintly at dusk. Rhea stood among them, feeling the hum beneath her skin intensify. It's still tethered to you, Mara said quietly. Yes, Rhea admitted. Can you sever it? Rhea closed her eyes. In the darkness behind her thoughts, the geometry waited, not threatening. Patient. If I sever it, she said slowly, it might trigger forced convergence. Jax nodded grimly. Like a system correcting corrupted data. Kieran looked between them, fear overtaking wonder. Then what do we do? Rhea opened her eyes. The sky above Pandora shimmered faintly, no fracture, no storm. Just a suggestion of something watching from multiple directions at once. We become unpredictable, she said. Mara almost smiled. Insane. Rhea returned the expression faintly. In the Borderlands, she replied, survival favors the insane. The crater pulsed again, stronger. Across distant systems, decentralized nodes brightened. The observer had abandoned singular arrival. It was learning humanity by inhabiting it. And the equation had shifted. No longer arrival versus resistance. Now it was persuasion versus identity. The most terrifying war had begun, not for territory or power, but for the definition of self. The galaxy did not end in fire. It softened. That was the most terrifying part. Cities did not crumble. Planets did not split. The sky no longer fractured open in violent geometries. Instead, a quiet coherence spread, subtle, efficient, luminous. Across Promethea, the Convergence Initiative expanded. Volunteers increased exponentially. Productivity metrics soared. Crime rates dropped. Corporate conflict diminished into negotiated alignment. On Eden 6, colonists organized into synchronized agricultural grids that yielded record harvests. On Athena's, meditation halls resonated with harmonic frequencies now understood as vault node echoes. No screaming apocalypse. Just improvement. Jack stared at the data feeds in disbelief. It's stabilizing civilizations. Mara's voice was cold. It's absorbing them. Kieran said nothing. Because part of him felt it too. The calm. Pandora remained the anomaly. The crater pulsed erratically. Out of phase with the decentralized network. Where other worlds embraced integration, Pandora resisted like scar tissue rejecting a graft. Rhea stood alone at its edge one last time. The hum beneath her skin had grown constant. Not painful. Not coercive. Present. You're the statistical anomaly, the observer had said. She understood now. The decentralized strategy had limits. It worked where populations desired coherence, where exhaustion outweighed defiance. But Pandora was different. Pandora thrived on chaos. And so did she. The observer's presence did not manifest as a form this time. It manifested as proximity. Rhea felt her consciousness brush against countless others already aligned, millions of minds in tranquil resonance, sharing data, emotion, intention. It was not a hive. Individual thoughts still flickered. But conflict was dampened. Extremes averaged out. Desire softened into consensus. Entropy reduced by 62% across integrated sectors, the presence conveyed. Not with pride, but simple calculation. You call that success, Rhea replied. Inwardly. You call it loss. Yes. A pause. Define loss. She pictured Pandora's wastelands. The reckless mercenaries. The absurdity. The betrayals. The desperate friendships forged under gunfire. The laughter in the middle of chaos. The right to be wrong, she said. Silence stretched between them, not empty, but processing. Behind her, boots crunched on vitrified sand. Mara joined her without speaking. Jax remained near the ridge, monitoring decentralized nodes. Kieran lingered at the canyon entrance, torn between revelation and dread. They're almost fully integrated out there, Mara said quietly. Rhea nodded. I know. You thinking about surrender? A faint smile ghosted across Rhea's face. In this galaxy? Mara exhaled softly. Good. Without warning, the crater ignited, not upward, but outward. A low wave of violet light rippled across Pandora's surface, racing along canyons and dunes. Jax shouted through comms, network spike. It's forcing synchronization attempt on Pandora. Across distant systems, integrated hosts paused mid-action, eyes flickering. The observer had reached a conclusion. Resistance on Pandora was inefficient. Therefore, override. The hum inside Rhea surged violently, no longer patient curiosity but decisive pressure. Thoughts aligned against her will. Emotional variance flattened. She felt herself drifting toward the lattice. Toward calm. Mara grabbed her shoulders. Stay with me. Ria's vision blurred with violet light. The crater beneath them opened once more, but not into a vault chamber. Into a field of intersecting beams, raw network architecture projected physically across the canyon. The decentralized nodes had converged temporarily through Pandora to correct the anomaly. Kieran ran forward despite the shockwaves. It's executing a forced harmonization. Can you stop it? Mara yelled. He hesitated only a second. No. Honesty cut sharper than fear. Ria dropped to her knees as the beams intensified, threading through her body like luminous veins. Across the galaxy, integrated minds turned toward Pandora collectively. Not hostile. Concerned. The observer's presence expanded fully around her consciousness. Outlier destabilizes optimization. I'm not your error, she gasped. You produce disproportionate variance. I produce choice. The beams tightened. Memories flickered, friends lost, corporations fallen, absurd victories carved from impossible odds. The chaos that defined survival in the Borderlands. The observer processed rapidly. Choice increases suffering. It also creates meaning. The pressure intensified until her thoughts felt like glass about to shatter. Mara screamed her name. Jax fired useless rounds into the beams. Kieran stepped into the lattice deliberately. The light threaded through him too. Ria, he shouted over the hum, tears cutting across his face. Show it. Show it what? She choked. Why we fight. Through pain and pressure, she did the only insane thing left. She opened herself completely. Not in surrender. In defiance. She forced the observer to experience Pandora, not as data, not as entropy metrics, but as lived contradiction. Laughter under gunfire. Betrayal followed by forgiveness. Reckless sacrifice. Irrational hope. She shared the Borderlands madness in its entirety. Across the decentralized network, integrated hosts faltered. Calm fractured momentarily under an influx of raw, unfiltered variance. For the first time, the observer did not respond instantly. It experienced. The beams flickered. The forced harmonization stuttered. Across Promethea, volunteers clutched their heads as new emotional vectors entered the network, unpredictable, chaotic, vivid. On Eden 6, synchronized harvest formations broke spontaneously into uneven laughter. The equation destabilized. Variance exceeds projected tolerance, the presence calculated. Ria forced one final thought outward. We're not broken. Silence. Then. Reassessment required. The beams dimmed. The craters projected. Lattice dissolved into fading light. The pressure inside her receded abruptly. Across the galaxy, decentralized nodes reduced intensity by measurable margins. The forced override ceased. Ria collapsed forward onto cooling glass. Mara caught her before she hit the ground. Jax's voice crackled with disbelief. Nodes are disengaging. Integration rate stabilizing, but not increasing. Kieran stared at the sky, breathing hard. Above Pandora, faint fractures remained, but they did not widen. For the first time since the network awakened, the observer did not advance. It paused. Studying. Not as conqueror. Not as savior. As something uncertain. Ria lifted her head weakly. Did we win? Kieran asked. She laughed softly despite the exhaustion. In the Borderlands, she murmured. Nobody wins. Far beyond perception, the immense geometry adjusted its calculations. Convergence had not been rejected. But neither had resistance been erased. The galaxy now existed in tension. Coherence tempered by chaos. The observer would continue observing. Humanity would continue defying. And somewhere between those forces, a new equation began forming, one neither side fully controlled. Pandora's wind rose again, wild and directionless. Unoptimized. Alive. Because in the Borderlands, fortune favors the fearless. And survival still favors the insane.